Hello and welcome to Kalamazoo and You. This is a program where we have conversations with City of Kalamazoo staff on important issues, events, and activities. I'm Mike Smith. I'm the Communications Manager for the City of Kalamazoo and your host. And on this segment, we're talking about the Kalamazoo Cannabis Chamber, what it is, its financial and social impact on the community. And with us to talk about the Kalamazoo Cannabis Chamber is Rebecca Colett. And you are the founder of the Detroit Cannabis Project. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about the Kalamazoo Cannabis Chamber. What is it and why is it important for the City of Kalamazoo?
The Kalamazoo Social Equity Cannabis Chamber is an initiative started by the Economic Development Department of the City of Kalamazoo. It is to enact the social equity policy that is actually in the recreational cannabis ordinance. So there's an ordinance when everybody voted for recreational cannabis in Kalamazoo. A part of that, of making cannabis recreational legally, is to set aside a percentage of the tax revenue for social equity policy. And the Social Equity Cannabis Chamber is the result of that set aside tax revenue. We are strictly formed to enact social equity policy in the City of Kalamazoo. And I'm sure we'll talk about what social equity is, because when I first entered the cannabis industry, I had no idea what that term meant. So I'm happy to get into that today.
Okay. So now, of course, you're not a city employee, but you operate and you work with the City of Kalamazoo staff, the community planning and economic development staff on the Kalamazoo Cannabis Chamber. That is correct, right?
Yes, we are like an arm of city employees and the EDC board. We get all of our direction from them.
How does the Kalamazoo Cannabis Chamber work, and what are the guidelines for participating in the marijuana industry and the chamber as well?
The chamber is a group of cannabis community stakeholders. It's a group of operators like me. It's a group of cannabis employees and also community leaders who all share the same ideal that, one, people should not be getting arrested for low-level cannabis consumption or possession, and two, that diversity does matter, especially in an industry that harmed so many of us through cannabis prohibition.
So talk about the social equity policy. What is that?
Social equity really means creating pathways and access for those communities most harmed by the war on drugs. To put it frank, Black and brown communities. You may not really think about it, but this industry that, incarcerated over 85% of low-level cannabis offenses incarcerate Black and brown people. But when you look at the legal industry, less than 2% of all cannabis licenses, including here in the state of Michigan, are to people that look like you and I. So the math is not mathing. So social equity is really created to provide access and opportunities to people who are from those communities most harmed by the war on drugs, but they want a job in the cannabis industry. They want education on how they can use cannabis a part of their life. They want the opportunity to open a dispensary, a grow, a secure transportation company. They want the opportunity. So we really provide education, workforce development, events, training to help those get into our industry however they see fit.
How successful are cannabis chambers in municipalities in the state of Michigan?
Actually, a fun fact is that we are the only cannabis chamber in the state of Michigan, and in fact, in the country, we're the only cannabis chamber that focuses specifically on social equity. So we are really teaching others how it's done. I've worked with different municipalities in the state of Michigan and also in California, Washington State. And what I can truly say about the staff at the City of Detroit, the EDC board, is that they really do care, not one, about diversity, but about creating tangible pathways to make sure that diverse people have access and opportunity. So more than just a policy, more than just a sticker, more than just saying something cute, here in Kalamazoo, they are actually creating tangible resources for diverse communities.
So do these cannabis chambers contribute to the local tax base?
Oh, of course. We have events, training workshops, all different types of programs where we specifically work with local businesses. You know, a lot of people think that the cannabis industry is in this bubble and that we are just all together in the basement smoking weed all day. And that is not the cannabis industry. The cannabis industry is a multi-billion-dollar global industry that is highly sophisticated. We're talking chemists, robotics, engineers. My background is in software engineering myself. We're talking about geniuses. So in our trainings, in our events, not only do we work with other cannabis employees and professionals from around the city, we also work with other local businesses like graphic designers, caterers, balloon companies, event spaces. That is contributing to the local tax base. We are giving small businesses opportunities to enter our industry, to add another event to their roster, to make more balloons so they can increase their P&Ls. We are not only contributing to the local cannabis tax base, but also the local small business tax base.
One of my questions was going to be about misgivings that people have, misunderstandings or misgivings that people have about the cannabis industry, about marijuana, of course. Why is that, and how do you overcome those misgivings?
You know, Michael, there are decades of misinformation out there about cannabis. And that is the number one reason that people have negative stigmas about a plant that should never have been criminalized in the first place. So the number one thing that we as a chamber do to mitigate that misinformation is by providing facts. We work with medical professionals, we work with scientists, we work with local regulators to put real information out there about cannabis, its effects, and just the real information out there. So it's not just gonna take a couple years to undo decades of misinformation, but we are definitely making strides. We can see over the past few years of recreational here in Michigan, we can see smaller communities actually starting to come around, actually starting to listen that cannabis is a medicine, cannabis is not a drug. They're starting to really understand that a lot of the negative feelings they had about cannabis was because of propaganda and not facts.
Now, you see a lot of operations in cities, across the state as well. But you also see some operations that have folded or gone out of business as well. So is the market oversaturated?
The cannabis industry has a sophisticated supply chain. A lot of everyday people who are not in the industry, like me, I always say behind the cannabis curtain, a lot of everyday people are just familiar with dispensaries, stores. That is one aspect of our industry. So a short answer is no. The cannabis industry is not oversaturated. This global multi-billion-dollar industry has just touched the surface for its economic opportunity. I think a lot of people, misinformation again, I think a lot of people drive and they see dispensary, just like they see McDonald's, but that does not mean the cannabis industry is oversaturated. That means maybe one aspect of that chain is oversaturated. There are so many more opportunities in our industry, and we are just getting started.
Now, you talked about the local tax base a few minutes ago. So what impact does the recently passed Michigan state budget have on the industry and the cannabis industry, as a whole?
Last month, January 2026, Governor Whitmore's road funding plan enacted a 24% wholesale tax on our industry. This was a surprise. It was a huge hurdle. But honestly, it's only February, and we as the industry don't really know the long-term impacts the tax will have thus far. One thing it does tell professionals in our industry is that regulators, perhaps in Lansing, are not familiar with the cannabis industry and what we do. They think we're all just like rolling in dough all day, throwing money out the air, getting money off trees, double entendre. But I think this text, not only do we not know the long-term effects yet, but also it gives us an opportunity to have a closer relationships with our regulators in Lansing. A lot of people do not know about the cannabis industry. What are we dealing with? What are the ins and outs? How is it working in the industry at 9 to 5? So we have this real opportunity to really start to build relationships with our regulators and have continuous conversations about our industry. So, you know, the tax, who knows the long-term effects, negative, positive, but what we do know is that we need to start to go to Lansing more often so regulators are familiar with our industry just like they are other industries.
And is the industry and the chamber successful in the city of Kalamazoo?
Yes, we are. We have gotten overwhelmingly positive support from cannabis employers, operators, just community members on our programs, our education, our scholarships, our grants to local nonprofits. They really see what we are doing in cannabis, in Kalamazoo as positive, and we are excited to keep going and to keep doing even more.
So in closing, what are the key messages you would like the public to know about the cannabis industry and its impact on the city of Kalamazoo?
Cannabis is not negative. I really encourage people to research the cannabis plant for themselves. And also, if you are somebody who comes from a diverse background and you want education in the cannabis industry, a job in the cannabis industry, a business opportunity in the cannabis industry, look us up, socialequitychamber.com.
Okay, and with that, we thank you for appearing on this program, and there's a lot of information that the public would like to know as well, so thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Michael.
And that ends our segment, and thank you for joining us on Kalamazoo and You, and we'll see you next time.